This is the Africa service of Vatican Radio.
Welcome to our half-hour daily program for Africa.
In today's program, you can hear our feature, The African Synod, the Church Alive in Africa Today. First, however, our bulletin of church news, followed by African News Panorama. We shall close today's program with Millennium Appointment. I am Festus Tarawali. Pope Francis on Monday received in audience a delegation of Buddhist monks from the Wat Phra Setupon Temple of Bangkok, one of the most important Buddhist temples in Thailand. In his address, the Holy Father reiterated the importance of a closer collaboration between the Church and Buddhists to address the pressing challenges facing our broken world today. Lisa Zengarini reports.
Oggi la nostra umanità e la terra sono davvero ferite.
Welcoming the Thai Buddhist monks in the Clementine Hall, Pope Francis expressed his appreciation for their enduring friendship and willingness to work together with the Catholic Church to bring a ray of hope to our wounded humanity. He recalled the extraordinary welcome he received during his apostolic journey to Thailand in 2019, and more recently the 7th Buddhist Christian Colloquium, which in November last year brought together more than 150 participants from various parts of Asia to reflect on the theme of dialogue for the healing of a wounded humanity and Earth. He referred in particular to the final statement in which the participants committed to working together with everyone in the midst of dark clouds overshadowing the world today. Pope Francis mentioned 3 key points highlighted during the colloquium, the first of which being that no one is saved alone, since we are all interconnected. In light of that truth, he urged the monks to continue working together with everyone to promote a friendship that sustains peace and fraternity and builds a more inclusive world. The colloquium further stressed the importance of educating everyone in caring and sharing relationships with one another and the environment, and also of prayer that can turn things upside down by purifying our hearts and minds, generating loving kindness, mercy and forgiveness.
Vi incoraggio a continuare a ravvivare il dialogo e la collaborazione.
Concluding, the Pope warmly thanked the Thai Buddhist monks for their visit and encouraged them to continue fostering dialogue and cooperation, especially with the Catholic Church in Thailand, in a spirit of lasting friendship. I am Lisa Zengarini.
Also on Monday morning in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, the President of the Dominican Republic, Luis Rodolfo Abinader Corona, was received in audience by Pope Francis. Shortly after, President Corona met with Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin, accompanied by Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher, Secretary for Relations with States and International Organizations. The Holy See Press Office statement said during the cordial discussions which took place at the Secretariat of State, appreciation was expressed for the good bilateral relations between the Dominican Republic and the Holy See and the will to strengthen them further. Earlier on Monday, Pope Francis received in private audience Father Andrew Campbell, a Divine Word missionary who has lived and worked mostly in Accra, Ghana for the last 53 years. Father Paul Samasumo has this report.
Inspired by St. Teresa of Calcutta, India, Father Andrew Campbell has dedicated his life working with the marginalized of Ghana. He has had great impact, especially working with street children, those suffering from disabilities, leprosy, and also generally those that are disadvantaged by society.
I was working at the age of 13 as a laborer, so I know what it's like to go without education. So I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. There are 100,000 street children on Accra living on the streets, from small little kids. But with the lepers, I'm actually living with them. Helping them, making sure everything is okay, their health, their food, all of this, I take care of them, and so staying with them.
Speaking to Vatican News after meeting with Pope Francis, Father Campbell spoke of his great joy at the encounter with Pope Francis.
I can't put words to it. It was so wonderful meeting. This man has always attracted me by his love of the poor, his love of the needy. No matter what, he was always taking care of a poor person, a needy person, a handicapped person. He always inspired me.
Father Campbell was accompanied to the Vatican by the Ghanaian couple, Mr. Gabriel Asempa Enchi, with his wife Priscilla. For Vatican News, I'm Father Paul Samasumo.
Pope Francis has expressed his sorrow and sent prayers for the victims of a landslide that struck Papua New Guinea on Friday. The country's National Disaster Center said the landslide in a remote village in the Enga province buried more than 2,000 people. In a telegram on Monday sent by Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Pope conveyed his heartfelt condolences and solidarity with the grieving families and all those affected by this tragedy. The Holy Father also assured his spiritual closeness to everyone affected by the disaster, praying especially for the deceased, those who mourn their loss, and for the rescue of the many still missing. His Holiness offers encouragement to the civil authorities and emergency personnel as they continue their relief efforts and willingly invokes upon all the divine blessings of consolation and strength, read the telegram addressed to the Apostolic Nuncio in Papua New Guinea, Archbishop Raleigh. President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa on Sunday addressed the nation in a televised broadcast in view of elections in the country this week. His ruling African National Congress is competing against opposition parties, including the Democratic Alliance, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the Mkonto Wizizwe, and dozens of smaller parties. Sheila Pirish sent us this report from Pretoria.
In a televised address to the nation on Sunday evening, President Cyril Ramaphosa encouraged South Africans to make their voices heard in the special voting today and tomorrow, as well as the main election day on Wednesday. In his address, President Ramaphosa praised the political parties for peaceful campaigning, free of intimidation, and emphasized the importance of free and fair elections.
In the days to come, we will be doing much more than exercising our constitutional right to vote. We will be determining the direction that our country takes. We will be taking responsibility for our future, the future of our families, our communities, and indeed our nation. As we cast our votes, we will be vindicating the struggles and the sacrifices of the generations before us who fought for this precious democracy that we now enjoy. As in every election that we have held since 1994, we expect this election to be held in conditions of peace and stability, to be free, fair, and credible. We commend the Independent Electoral Commission for the impressive work that they have undertaken in preparing for these elections.
In Pretoria, South Africa, for Vatican News, I'm Sheila Pirish.
You're tuned to the Africa service of Vatican Radio.
African News Panorama.
I'm Father Paul Samasumo. The International Aid Group Doctors Without Borders reports that in the last 2 weeks alone, over 123 people have been killed in the Darfur region. According to a report, clashes between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary rapid support forces escalated earlier this month, leaving thousands injured. The city of El Fasher in the Darfur region has become the center of conflict between the Sudanese military and the RSF, who are supported by Arab militia. More than 40,000 people have been killed in the Sudanese civil war, which started last year in April. It was reported on Sunday evening that Burkina Faso's military leaders have extended their stay in power by 5 years. After a national consultation involving civil society, security forces, and transitional lawmakers held on Saturday in the capital Ouagadougou, the military government announced the extension. The new transition will now run from the 2nd of July. Initially, the country was supposed to have been returned to civilian rule by July 2024. Much of the world's attention this week will be focused on South Africa's general elections to be held on Wednesday, 29th of May. However, on the very same day, the Malagasy people will also be voting in legislative elections. In November 2023, Andrei Rajoelina secured a third presidential term in an election boycotted by the opposition. This week's parliamentary elections in Madagascar will elect 151 members of the National Assembly. The electoral body, in a statement, said it had printed 12 million ballots. You are tuned to the Africa Service of Vatican Radio.
The African Synod, the Church alive in Africa today.
Hello and welcome to the program. I am Festus Tarawali. As you may have heard in our Sunday Bulletin of Church News, leaders of Catholic education in Africa and Madagascar have just ended a meeting in South Africa on the status of Catholic education on the continent. On the sidelines of the meeting, our colleague Sheila Purish spoke to Janice Sealand, director of the Catholic Institute of Education in South Africa. She told Sheila that this is the first time such a meeting has been held, and also spoke about the position of her institute regarding the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, also known as the Bella Bill.
We as a country are a member of the International Organization of Catholic Education, which is called OIEC. Today, or these last couple of days, we've been meeting as the Africa region, and it's the first time we've had a conference for the whole of Africa in one place. Unfortunately, a number of the countries couldn't make it for visa purposes, but also because they didn't have the funds to travel, so people had to pay their own way to get to South Africa. But roughly, I would say there are 20-25 countries represented here today.
So let's talk about this meeting. It's the first of its kind. What is the main objective of this meeting, the purpose behind this meeting?
Well, the purpose really behind the meeting is, as we all work in Catholic education, we can share common resources. So as an example, all of us have to work in child safeguarding, so we can use common resources across child safeguarding. We also look at sharing what could be best practice, and we also try and understand the situation of each country. And I think South Africa, we're quite fortunate. We don't have war, where we notice in a lot of the other countries, a lot of the schools are actually closed because some of them are in war-torn areas. So then it's also to offer each other moral support. So in a way, it's joint learning and how to maybe move forward.
I noticed that there are also coordinators from schools that are not necessarily Catholic schools. Talk to us about this sort of like ecumenical relationship that you have with other schools that are not Catholic, and besides that, you also had the presence of the Minister of Education from here, South Africa, who addressed you yesterday on some of the points concerning Catholic education and governments. Let's talk about this aspect of education.
Together with the representatives from Africa for Catholic Education, we have brought a whole lot of partners together from one of our international donors, and they don't necessarily only fund Catholic education. So a lot of those projects work in different schools and on different educational projects, like for unemployed youth. A lot of them I see also do work in life orientation and life skills for young people, etc. So there it's also to do joint learning. And this morning our international donor presented their African charter for our projects, and it was good for us to be able to look at the SDGs, that's the Sustainable Development Goals, and see how we are able or are moving to achieve them.
Now, still on that aspect of education and the Minister of Education coming here to address you, you also spoke about the Bella Bill, which has brought a whole lot of speculation and disagreements and so forth. In a nutshell, can you just explain to Catholic parents or parents in general about the Bella Bill, and are you happy with it?
The Bella Bill is the Basic Education Law Amendments Bill. It did get a lot of negative exposure. We are supportive of the bill because essentially in South Africa the state is responsible for education. Now, if some of those powers, as an example, if a school could choose its own language policy and be exclusive in its language policy, or say that the school was full, the state would not be able to request a public school to actually take children of a different language, and that posed quite a large challenge for the state specifically. So whilst a lot of the SGB rights and other rights are still actually in place, it's more of an administrative bill where there was a lot of speculation that they now want, as she mentioned yesterday, somebody even thought it's now an anti-abortion bill, but there's absolutely nothing like that in the actual act itself. So yes, we do support it, and we do believe it will just make access of education available to more South Africans.
Now, you mentioned some of the challenges that Catholic education faces in other parts of Africa, such as conflict, internal displacement, and so forth. But South Africa also has its own challenges in terms of Catholic education. If you could mention some of those challenges and how you plan to overcome them.
Thank you. We have 320 schools in South Africa. If you look at our education sector, our schools are almost a microcosm of the state, where we have more wealthy schools and we have some schools in the most remote farm outlying areas. I think the biggest challenge for Catholic education per se is funding, finance. So the church itself is not able, because we don't have as many missionaries anymore, to bring as much money from overseas to invest in the plant of the buildings. So we do find that some of the buildings are not necessarily being maintained. The other challenge is we have signed an agreement with the department, so over 200 of our schools are public schools on private property, but the state has the right to appoint the teachers and the leaders. Now, it's quite difficult to keep your ethos in a school if nobody in the school of the teachers actually understands the ethos. And a lot of the new people moving into provincial departments don't fully actually understand the framework or the deed of agreement that we've actually signed. So we have to do continuous advocacy. So that's one of the challenges. And I think we do, as every school in South Africa, face issues with drugs, with media, and particularly social media, because that has become a huge avenue for young kids to actually bully each other, which is quite sad.
Are you happy with the outcome of this conference, and how soon are you likely to have a similar meeting?
I do think we are happy with this conference because I certainly think they've signed statutes in place now for this to be an existing organization. We've elected new leaders into these positions. I would only think a conference like this would happen maybe every 3 years. There is an executive which is from around the world, and they meet more regularly, and I know they'll meet in Geneva in December. But also, maybe just to mention, the Catholic education is represented internationally at places like the United Nations. And we had the Paulette here, who actually is a representative of ours in the United Nations. Now, what is also quite exciting is whenever topics come up around the specific countries who are here today, she will be able to talk firsthand from getting the information on the ground. And I think that's one of the advantages of our Catholic network, is you can be networked into all the different countries and speak from the lived experience on the ground.
That was Janice Sealand, Director of the Catholic Institute of Education in South Africa, speaking there to Sheila Firish.
You are welcome to Millennium Appointment. Thousands of pilgrims from different Catholic dioceses in Uganda and from neighboring countries have arrived at the Uganda Martyrs Shrine in Namugongo to take part in the celebration of the Feast of the Uganda Martyrs on June 3rd. They have been walking for days, spending nights in designated Catholic parishes on the route and praying. The Uganda Catholic Bishops' Conference chose the Catholic Diocese of Nebbi in northern Uganda to lead this year's celebration. Vatican Radio got in touch with the director of the Uganda Martyrs Shrine, Father Vincent Rubega, one of whose main responsibilities is to prepare the place before the arrival of the pilgrims.
The first groups are already here. We are already equipped.
Tell us some of the challenges that we encounter in organizing Namugongo for the Uganda Martyrs Feast.
I would say quite a number of challenges. First of all, the first challenge, you don't know how many people are coming. And not only coming, but when they are arriving. Because, you may find that you are prepared for 100 people, prepare the showers and the toilets, and then in the night, 800 arrive. So you have to adjust all the time. And the facilities are only used during this time of the year. So for over, I would say, 11 months, some of these things are redundant. The toilets, the showers. When the time is approaching, you have to do a lot of repair because of tear and wear. And in most cases, these are footed by us, the parish. The diocese is organizing also cleaning, but in most cases, you have to maintain them before they come in. So one of the things we face as Namugongo are the resources to keep the place going. There are many facilities which are not used until that time. Then there's also the challenge of security. Security is not only in the form of bombs and all that. Sanitation is also security. To make sure that water is supplied all the time, we have to keep an eye on all these things. So that's a big, big challenge. And though we have organizing dioceses, but the challenge falls on us. Also to make sure that we prepare all these programs. There are many key players to make sure they are all up to the mark. That is quite a challenge. Another challenge I face is the financial challenge to keep this place running. Namugongo is always focused on around the 3rd of June. But remember, it's a shrine which is running from January to December. And it's running as a parish. It's not a national, I would say, monument whereby we receive money from the state to keep the place going. All the money running the shrine, the power, the water, and everything is from the income I generate from the church offertory. So that is a big, big challenge to keep the workers and everybody going. And even keeping the spiritual standard. Many places can even equip to money-making ventures, but to keep that standard of the spiritual aspect is not easy. So every time you have to keep an eye on what is happening and who is doing it, and also the standards of what is being done. And of course, even getting viable priests, people who are able to do what is necessary and what is viable. So all these things are part of the challenges.
Priests. How do you do it? Do you have to ask dioceses to send those priests to help, especially in the novena and the other spiritual activities, or it is Kampala Archdiocese where Namugongo is located that actually gives you that manpower?
No, normally the facility is for Namugongo and it's handed over to me, okay? So it's me to work out the programs and look for the people. So I try to approach them personally. But remember, normally towards the 3rd June, the number of people increase, and organizing diocese brings in priests from their diocese. But for the day-to-day running, and even before they take over, normally it is me to look for those people.
Now, when the pilgrims arrive at Namugongo, are they your responsibility or the responsibility of their home dioceses?
When they arrive, it's totally my responsibility to make sure they are comfortable, especially the first group which arrive. Now when the numbers increase, it is the responsibility of me, together with the organizing diocese, to make sure that we offer them facilities viable for their stay. But when I talk of what I offer security, I offer also water and light for their sanitation, but for feeding, each one of them look forward to it.
Compared to the past, Uganda Martyrs Shrine in Namugongo is now one of the most known places of Catholic pilgrimage in Africa and beyond. To what do you attribute that?
First of all, people come to learn of the place because of the media. Now there is an expanded media coverage of the place. Secondly, the Pope coming around Namgongo has made it more pronounced. The Pope has sold, I would say, the place. And the development which is in here also has become a center of attraction. And lastly, the miracles, the gifts people harvest from coming here has been more pronounced. So the media has sold the miracles, I would say, and people are more and more attracted to the place. And also the availability of animators. I would say since I came in here, there's a priest always on the ground, and also we are putting more to make the place organized. The sanitation, the security, and everything. And I would think also the government has picked a lot of interest, especially our president now, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the interest he has had in developing this place, which has brought it to a standard which is very high, has also made the place more known.
That's all that I had, but if you have anything to add on what you have said, please, you are welcome.
What I would like to say, Namgongo is a special place for pilgrimage. People come and they have a spiritual experience. But the running of the place is solely on our shoulders, on my shoulders, together with the king. Namgongo is not like a national monument whereby the state comes in and they pay for the workers and all the other amenities. For here, it's me who looks after it together with the parishioners. And it's quite heavy, but we have never failed. I think that's one of the miracles.
Our thanks there to Father Vincent Rubega, a member of the Missionaries of Africa and rector of the Uganda Martyrs Shrine in Namugongo. I am Johnny Baptist Musime.
You are tuned to the Africa service of Vatican Radio. In our next program at the same time tomorrow, you can hear our feature, Justice and Peace. I am Festus Tarawali, and do join us then. Praised be Jesus Christ. Laudetur Jesus Christus.